Court does call the case of the People versus Jason Bissonette.
Caitlin Kirby on behalf of the people.
And good morning, Your Honor. Robert Ellman with and on behalf of Mr. Defendant who's approaching.
All right, date and time set for trial. Ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor, we are ready to proceed. And just for sequestration purposes, I only have my victim in the courtroom who I am going to be calling first, and I have my officer in charge.
All right, the officer in charge without objection may remain.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, just one preliminary matter, as I always ask in your court, if I may be seated here at table to question witnesses.
Yes, you may, counsel. Absolutely.
And the people would call Ms. Eagle to the stand.
Ma'am, please come forward to be sworn.
I swear affirm the testimony about to give the truth and all truth and nothing but the truth. So help you God. Have a seat. State your first and last name and spell it for the record.
Chen, Eagle, E-A-G-L.
You may inquire.
Thank you. Ms. Eagle, do you recall the date of March 12th, 2023?
Yes.
And where were you that day?
My
Okay, and so what street is your place located on? And do you know what city or township that's in?
It's like.
And could the court take judicial notice that Primrose Lane?
Primrose is in Pittsfield Township. I would
Yes,
say.
thank you, Your Honor. And who were you with that day?
Jason.
And, okay, and do you see Jason Bissonette in the courtroom today? And can you point to him and identify something he's wearing? Okay, and can you identify something he's wearing for me, please?
The brown jacket and the shirt.
Okay. And let the record reflect that this witness identified the defendant as Jason Bissonette.
Record show so reflect.
And what is your relationship to him?
He's my ex-fiance.
And how long were you two together?
Over 10 years.
And on this date, on March 12th, 2023, were you still together?
No, we broke up.
And why was he at your home?
We were supposed to discuss my dining table, because I have to move to apartment. And then the dining table is too big. He wants that dining table forever. So maybe you may take the dining table. So he said you're gonna stop by.
And when he was there, did anything out of the ordinary happen?
Oh, he looked just normal. He just opened the door. He come upstairs and just sat down like his place, which is he moved out of there. And then start talking like nothing. We're just together again.
And at any time, did you get into an altercation with him? Did any time you start arguing?
About 10 minutes later, when he was there, he had this attitude, and I said, well, you gotta go. He looked upset, and he started to say very unpleasant to me.
Okay. And at any point, did that argument become physical? And what happened?
Towards the end, because we had an argument, and then I told him to get out. So I followed him. He had that smile on his face, and then he made that's I don't know noise was, and then he went downstairs. I followed him because I want to lock the door, and then he turned around, punched me.
Okay.
And then I fell. At my back, the stairs, last stuff.
Okay. So you said he pushed you, and how did he push you?
Actually, he punched.
Okay.
Like this at my chest.
Okay. And so did he use one hand or two hands?
One.
Okay. And you said you fell backwards onto the stairs?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you hit the actual stairs with your back?
Yeah.
And did you go, at any point, did you receive medical attention for this?
the following Monday, I went to see my prominent doctor. Excuse me.
Okay. And why did you go see your doctor? And at any point, did you physically touch Mr. Bissonette? Yes.
No,
And at any point, did you threaten him?
no.
And
Well,
did,
I say, before, when we were living together, he pushed and shoved and knocked me down after I had a back surgery. And then he just, it was horrible. I did say I'm gonna call the cop, and then he did say, well, if you call the cop, I'm gonna go to jail. I'm gonna end up like your son doing dishwasher. And then I cannot pay child support because you're gonna call the cop and then, well, then you.
Your Honor, I'm gonna object to relevancy of this.
I'll sustain that objection. You
okay,
could rephrase your question. I think she's gone a bit far afield.
okay. And at any point during that day, did you give him permission to touch you the way that he touched you?
No.
No further questions for this witness at this time.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Ms. Eagle, how are you? I'm gonna remain seated here at table and I do have a little bit of a cold, so if there's anything I ask you that you can't, hear, I'll be happy to repeat myself or rephrase it if you don't understand, okay? So, do you recall when you and Mr. Bissonette broke up?
We woke up. What do you mean?
Isn't it true that he moved out on March 9th?
Yes,
Okay. And that was his choice to move out, correct?
actually, yes,
Okay. And isn't it true that after he moved out, you kept calling him and texting him and asking him to come back?
oh, no.
No. Did you invite him over for dinner on March 10th?
No.
So you two did not have dinner together on March 10th?
So after we broke up, there's nothing.
And isn't it true that you called him on March 12th to bring you cigarettes?
Yeah, because he was getting a dining table.
But you did text him and request that he bring you cigarettes?
Yes, I paid for it.
And after March 9th, did you also request that he take you to your doctor's appointments?
No.
No.
He usually take me doctors, any place voluntarily take me. I cannot go anywhere without him. He take me everywhere.
Is that because you don't have your own vehicle?
I have a vehicle.
Okay. John, I'm sorry, I just have one moment.
No, that's fine.
So you invite him over on March 12th, correct?
For dining table, yes.
And isn't it true that at that time you wanted to be back in a relationship with him?
No. No, because he hit me so many times. Yeah, no.
All right, and so you are saying, I just want to make sure your testimony is clear. He came over on the 12th because he wanted the table, not because you wanted him over.
Dining table.
The dining table, correct. Okay. And how much of the rent did you pay in the apartment?
Objection, Your Honor, relevant.
What is irrelevant?
I think it goes to her relevance as to motive. There's been some early discrepancies in her testimony.
At this point, I'm going to sustain the objection. I don't see the relevance.
Fair enough, Your Honor, thank you. Ms. Eagle, isn't it true that you originally told the police officers that Mr. Bissonette pushed you with two hands?
I'm not sure.
But your testimony today is that he punched you with one hand?
It feels like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you said it feels like it?
It punch to me. So
Were his hands open?
I cannot tell. It was so fast.
And was it one hand? Or two?
I believe it was.
Okay. Were you mad at him for leaving?
I was supposed to move first.
My question is, were you mad at him now?
Yes, because, yeah,
Okay. And it's true also that you did not call the police after this happened, correct?
I just,
Yes or no, ma'am, I'm sorry.
he telling me,
Did you call the police after this happened, ma'am?
no, I talked to Dr. Carmen, that my doctor called her.
And so the police contacted you in this matter, is that correct? Okay. And isn't it true, I believe you said that Mr. Bissonette used to take you to all of your doctor's appointments, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And have you ever threatened to call the police on him before,
Yes,
when nothing happened between you two?
can I explain?
Yes or no, ma'am?
Nothing happened,
With no physical altercation?
you're gonna be caught.
So you threatened to call the police on him because he called you an offensive word?
Yes,
Okay. Can I just have one moment, Your Honor?
You mean?
So I just wanna, I do wanna clear one thing up. So now your testimony today is that he punched you and you fell backwards into the stairs, correct? Okay, and then what, did he leave after that? Okay. And nothing else transpired between the two of you? And have you tried to contact him since that date?
no,
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, just a few questions.
And Miss Eagle, what was the reason that the defendant drove you everywhere?
I don't have no friends because of him. You, extremely jealous person, due to his ex-husband cheated on him, so he don't
Your
trust.
Honor, I'm going to object. I don't think that's relevant to the answer to the question.
Well, Your Honor, the defense did ask why he drove her and if he drove her to appointments. And did she ask him if he drove her to appointments? So and she stated she had her own car, so I'm asking why he did that. I believe it goes to the relationship. There is relevance to it.
I'll overrule the objection. I'll hear it for what it's worth.
You can continue, Miss Eagle.
So he doesn't trust one. Because before he checked my car, constantly the GPS, the location, and the stuff. But when I had back surgery, he had to take me to hospital.
Okay. And can you tell me why you didn't call the police that day that this happened? Okay. Can you tell me why the argument started that day? It's okay for you to answer. The court has heard it all, I'm sure.
Well, he wanted to have an intimacy, and I said no.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
You may step down. Thank you. Any further witnesses for the people?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor, at this time, I would like to call the defendant, Jason Bissonette.
All right. Sir, please come forward to be sworn.
I'm swear affirm the testimony about the truth, so help you God. See, state your first and last name and spell it for the record, please.
Jason Bissonette. ASONBISSON.
May inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Bissonette, as I said, which I know you've heard, but if there's anything that you can't hear me say, seated here, please let me know and I'll repeat myself or rephrase the question if it's something. Okay? And, did you have a relationship with a Miss, or what is your relationship with Miss Chin Eagle?
We were off and on for 10 years and we had for that, we together for that point, that was March 9th.
Okay. And March 9th, is that the date you moved out?
Right.
Can you tell me why you chose to move out at that time, or if it was your choice?
It was my choice. Our relationship was not going well. And she was very verbally offensive, very verbally abusive for months and months. And it was finally on March 9th that I had the financial ability to pay for 2 rents at the same time.
And did you give her any, I guess, advance notice that you'd be moving out?
We had talked about needing to move out. We had discussed it a few times. She did discuss that she wanted to move out, but she was not going to be able to move out till May, or at least ended May 29th. And I felt that I needed to, I had an opportunity to move out sooner. So I had to figure that I could move out to at least the middle of March. That's where it was. I did not.
Objection, Your Honor, narrative at this point.
Overruled. Go ahead.
It was that I did not actually formally tell her to move out to that point.
And did you have, and I don't want to get to March 12th yet, but did you have any communication with her from the 9th, I guess, of the 10th and the 11th?
Yes, I saw her on 10th. She invited me over that evening. We had dinner, hung out for a few hours, and then I left. Then she met, over the next 2 days, she texted 30 times, called a dozen times.
And without saying what those messages said or those calls said, what were the kind of the basic nature of those messages?
They were, just mostly pretty short. I want to talk, stop.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Again,
Sustained as to the hearsay.
and Mr. Bissonette, so I guess I don't want you to tell me what the text messages said, but what did you believe based on the messages that were sent?
I believe that she was angry with me moving out. And I believe that she wanted to still keep me under her control.
Okay. Now, when you say keep you under her control, what has happened? I guess, can you tell me why you phrased it that way?
Everything she required that I do everything. She made a notice or note that I was forcing her to take her to her appointments.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay, and I would also object as to relevance of the question and the answer.
Go ahead.
My response is, and similarly to the end of Ms. Eagle's testimony, I believe the relevance goes to the nature of the relationship, which has come into question here, but I can rephrase a little bit in terms of any kind of hearsay issue, but I do think that it's already come to pass.
Well, I'm going to allow the testimony. I'm going to rule both of the objections. I mean, Ms. Eagle has stated what she has said regarding what she said. So I'm going to hear from it. I'll overrule both objections. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, and maybe it's best if I just rephrase or restate the question and to get us back on track here. But you had said, I believe, that you, correct me if I'm wrong, something about being under her control, and I asked you why you phrased it that way.
She, I provided everything in the relationship.
Do you mean that on a financial level, emotional level?
Financial.
And did you in fact take her to her doctor's appointments?
I did.
Okay. Can you tell the court why you did that?
She requested that I do it. I would leave work, come home, and I would take days off of work.
So you actually lost work time in order to help her? Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
And so now I wanna kind of get into the date in question here, March 12th. Why did you go over to, I guess, is it her apartment, both of yours apartments at that time?
I had moved out, so, but we were both on the lease.
Okay. And the lease wasn't up?
It was not.
Okay. So why did you go over there on the 12th?
There were many text messages and phone calls. And she said that she wanted cigarettes. And she said that her kids were not available to go to her, and it was snowing, and she didn't want to go on games.
I would object to that whole entire answer as hearsay.
Overrule.
And was there anything mentioned about this dining room table?
It's possible. I did not go over there to the dining room table.
And so, and I'm not trying to lead you here, I just want to make sure I understand your answer. You went over there to bring her cigarettes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And can
See
you,
my dog.
I'm sorry?
I see the dog.
And see the dog? Okay. And what happened, before we get to the staircase, what happened, how was the nature of the visit once you were there?
It was clear that she was agitated. I sat on the couch, on the opposite end of the couch with her. And she kept on saying that she wanted to get closure with the relationship, talk about the relationship. I was under the impression that we'd broken up and there was no need to continue talking about the relationship. She then became more angry and started threatening me with calling the police. She started threatening me with having her son write a letter and send it to my work to try to get me fired.
And at that time, had you physically made contact with her at all or anything like that? No. Okay, sorry to cut you off, but go ahead.
Then I said, you know what? I don't need to listen to this anymore. So I stood up to leave. I asked for the money for the cigarettes. She said she was not going to give me money for the cigarettes. I said, fine, I'll take the cigarettes. She said, no, leave them. There's money over there. I went, got the money and went downstairs. The apartment was on that second floor. And I went to leave. She came down and the dog was there. Bent down, kissed the dog. Stood up. She looked at me. She says, oh, I want your shoes. Because she had bought me those shoes the week before.
Okay.
And I just kind of stopped. I said, yeah, whatever. And I turned around and opened the door. And I walked out, and then she slammed the door on me, and then the door hit me.
Okay. Now, when you say the door hit you, where did it hit you?
But back.
Okay. And as you were leaving, did you make any physical contact with her?
I did not.
So you never pushed her,
No physical contact.
never punched her?
Did not.
Okay. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
And you stated there were numerous text messages and phone calls, correct?
Correct.
And did you give proof of those to your counsel?
I did.
Okay. And did you give proof of those to the officer?
The officers never contacted.
And were you aware that she had called the officers on you?
I was not.
And so you never gave a statement to the police officers? And isn't it true that you had asked her to engage in sexual relations that day? And you stated that you moved out, is that correct? But you still voluntarily went over there every day after you moved out. Is that correct?
I don't believe that was his testimony. I would object to that.
So I can rephrase, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So after you moved out on the 9th, is that correct? And you stated you went over there on the 10th to have dinner, is that correct? And you went over there on the 12th to bring her cigarettes, is that correct? Okay, so did you go over there 2 of the days after you had moved out?
Yes.
And you did that voluntarily, correct? Okay, and you stated that you were under the impression that you guys had broken up on the 9th, is that correct? But you still chose to contact her and go over to the apartment, isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and at any point, did you ever write out a promise to Miss Eagle?
I'm going to object. I think this promise is irrelevant as it doesn't relate to the day in question, and it is also highly prejudicial.
And Your Honor, I am using it for impeachment purposes.
Well, when was this promise written?
Well, it's signed on September 29th of 2022, but it was given to the officer on the day of question.
Again, Your Honor, that's 5 months prior to this incident. I don't know if it has any relevance to what happened on March 12th. I don't believe it does, I should say.
What does it have to do with March 12th? If it's,
I can allow the court to read it if the defense counsel has no objection.
Your Honor, I kind of don't, but I also think once you've read it, the prejudicial issue now becomes you're making the decision and now you've read the document.
I can usually separate certain things
If
out.
you- then
I mean,
would-
I don't know what it says, and I don't know.
Sure, if you can separate the two, Your Honor, then I have no objection.
I've been doing this for a minute. I think I can.
I'm just covering my bases.
I understand. So you have no objection given that for me
Given
to,
that, no, I do, Your Honor.
right? So what is the argument regarding that? As to why I should even consider that?
I believe it goes to the veracity and I believe it goes to his truthfulness that nothing has ever happened. And the defense counsel had asked prior in the victim's testimony if she had ever called the cops for nothing happened, proving and showing that she has called the cops, which she testified to, but I don't think it goes to nothing. I think it was a trick question. And I think that it goes to her truthfulness and it also goes to his truthfulness on the stand.
Your Honor, I would wholeheartedly disagree. She stated that she has called the cops before because of a verbal statement. I believe her testimony, and I apologize, was that he called her a cunt, and that is why she called the cops. There was nothing else testified. It wasn't a trick question. I gave her the opportunity to openly answer it, and that was her answer.
Well, you're using that to have the court somehow or another say something happened then on this day? Almost 6 months later?
I'm using it to show that his truthfulness on the stand is not accurate.
Your Honor, I don't know how any note that he wrote or that she made him write, as we don't know any of that yet at this point, would reflect at all on his truthfulness.
Well, if it's for impeachment purposes, I'll allow it. I mean, I don't know that it helps me in terms of what happened this day. But go ahead.
So you're saying on March 12th that no physical altercation happened between the two of you? And you stated that you did not physically touch Miss Eagle at all on the 12th. And have you ever physically touched her in a way she did not want before?
I'm gonna object to I guess that question is a little bit almost too open. I think it's too broad of a correct question.
I'll sustain that objection. It needs to be more tailored than that.
Have you ever physically had an altercation with the victim before?
Yes.
And have you ever put your hands on her before?
Yeah.
Okay. No further questions for this witness.
Your Honor, obviously I have a lot of follow-up after that.
Go ahead.
I guess to ask you that, how did that scenario come about when you put your hands on her in the past?
It was one time we were fighting. I left the room to go in another room. She followed me. I was laying down reading a book. She followed me in there. She then proceeded to try to unbuckle my pants, put on my pants, pushed her away, said no, was in the mood, we were arguing. Then she started trying again.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Your Honor,
Overruled.
thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Bissonnette.
And then finally, I grabbed her arm and used force to push her arm away. So that's would be the incident that she would have brought up.
So that
Altercation.
So you did have a physical altercation,
I
correct?
grabbed her arm and I pushed her arm away from my pants.
So just to clarify, your reaction was a reaction to her touching you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as the people have alluded to this letter, whose idea was it to write the letter?
Objection, Your Honor, I actually never got to question him about the letter whatsoever.
That's correct. I'll sustain that objection.
Okay, you know what, I'm not gonna ask that, Mr. Bissonnette, I have no further questions.
Hearing nothing else, you may step down. Thank you, sir. Any additional witnesses for the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Any rebuttal witnesses for the people?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Are we ready for closing?
Okay, Your Honor, you heard Miss Eagle testify that her and the defendant were in a relationship. That was her ex-fiance. You heard her testify that she was embarrassed to call the cops at that time. Why the argument originally started was because he was asking her to have physical relations and she did not want to. You heard her state that she called him over to get a dining room table and that eventually she asked him to leave. She followed him downstairs to lock the door behind her and he turned around and punched her in the chest. She fell against the steps, hitting her lower back. She also testified that she previously had back surgery. The defendant was aware of that. She testified that she did seek medical attention the Monday after this event occurred, and that is when she told her doctor, and that's how this case began. He said that she did not give him permission to touch her in that way, and I would ask that the court find a guilty verdict.
Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
in simplest terms, you've also heard the exact opposite testimony from my client. There's also been some inconsistencies. Excuse me. My client testifies that he went over there for dinner on the 10th. He denied that dinner ever happened. She denied ever contacting him after the 9th, yet somehow he still ends up over there to allegedly take this table. you know, again, the testimony is that she did not call the police. She had a pre-scheduled doctor's appointment through which she told her doctor and the police became involved. But you also heard that the police never contacted my client. They never questioned him, never asked him anything of the sort. He didn't find out about this until he was charged. He had no idea. He also testified that, that given her emotional abuse, that he told her March 9th, the day he was moving out, that he was moving out. And yes, he did go back over there. I would argue because he's a nice person and wanted to be helpful, even though the relationship had ended. But I think, Your Honor, all of this adds up to reasonable doubt. I would also say that Mr. Bissonette has been very truthful on the stand. He, you know, even testifies to an older physical altercation that happens when, again, you know, he's answering these questions, he's here, and I think there is just a ton of reasonable doubt given the differences in these two stories. There was no call to the police, nothing, no physical reports of injury, no pictures, bruises, and again, no question of my client whatsoever. So again, I think there is plenty of reasonable doubt for you to find my client not guilty in this case.
And Your Honor, I asked the defendant on the stand, did you give your counsel these text messages or proof of these phone calls? To this day, the prosecution has none of that. None of that was entered into as exhibits. I don't have any proof that these text or phone calls ever happened. You heard the victim on the stand say that they didn't happen except for the dining room table and the cigarettes. So defense has not brought any proof to show that she was telling him anything in any kind of way. And if there is proof and it was given to counsel, obviously that's a discovery issue. But I would say that her testimony was more than truthful. She was upfront about what she asked of him. He obviously said that he had thought they had broken up, and if that was the case and he did not want to be at her home anymore, he didn't have to go there on the 10th or the 12th. He did that voluntarily.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to take a few moments and I'll come back and give my decision on this. Court recalls the case of the People versus Jason Bissonette.
On behalf of the people.
Good morning, Your Honor. Robert Ellman, with and on behalf of Mr. Bissonette, who's approaching.
Either side want to say anything else before the court gives its decision?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Right. Court listened closely to the testimony, and sometimes the he said, she said circumstances are difficult to get into place. What's clear to the court is that this is and was a troubled relationship. And sometimes the decisions in this case hinge on what makes sense on that date, that being particularly March 12th, 2023. And there isn't a dispute that the defendant left the residence where they were residing together on March 9th. In looking at it, one can look at what occurred before and what the court believes. I believe that the defendant did move out on March 9th, that by his own choice, and that's certainly not in dispute. There is this dispute on them seeing each other in between. I believe somehow or another, and the court's feeling, although it doesn't have much bearing on the court's decision, is that there was a dinner that happened between these parties on March 10th. I also then believe that on the 12th, what doesn't make sense is Ms. Eagle's rendition of why the defendant came over. It wasn't as though he was going to a sale to purchase a dining room table. I'm presuming he would have known what that dining room table looked like. She said she couldn't keep it because she was moving to another apartment. And they were going to talk about this table. Defendant says him oversee the dog, that he alludes to messages, one culminating in him bringing her cigarettes. So my belief is that there was this, that there was that communication that then occurred. Not quite what Ms. Eagle testified to as to regarding the cigarettes, so she focused on him getting this dining room table. He left, I would say, that day without that dining room table. So that was the purpose that would seem to me would have gone for naught because he didn't get it. And I don't think that's why he was there. I think he was there because she wanted to talk to him. Maybe he wanted to talk to her, but he gets there, he brings her cigarettes. The issue of whether or not she wanted to pay for them because of a dispute, whatever, and his indication that she wanted to talk about closure, but he did not. He decides to leave and he goes down the stairway and he's at the door. I think that his rendition of what occurred is much more credible in terms of what transpired that day that he got down. I don't believe that he punched her in the chest. I would note that while there wasn't testimony of a push, she made it very clear that he punched her in the chest, that made her fall backwards. I think that overstatement. I don't think had he done that, that she would have been able to wait to the next day to necessarily see her doctor regarding that and or her back. And just so that the parties are aware, March 12th was a Sunday, and that she said that she saw a doctor on that Monday, and that as the court is to understand, that's how this all came about. Said she fell back, and then he walked out and he left. I don't find her credible in terms of what she says transpired. I think there were a lot more things going on regarding that, and that she didn't give this court the full truth about, number one, why he was there, their communication in between the 9th when he left and the 12th. So not finding her credible, I don't find that the people have indeed sustained their burden of showing that this offense was committed beyond a reasonable doubt, and the court would find that the defendant is not guilty of the charges. Okay.